Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Trends and Predictions webinar, taking a look back at the trends in facility management in this past year and looking ahead to what we anticipate in 26. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. Our webinar platform is called Big Marker. Over on the right-hand side, you have options for both chat and Q&A. The chat will let you communicate with the entire audience as well as us. The Q&A allows you to submit questions directly to the OpenBlue team, and we'll take those live if we're able, but if not, we will follow up with you afterwards. And we always love for our audience to introduce themselves in the chat. It's always really interesting for us to see who's attending and particularly what your functional role is in your organization. We work with people from facility managers to space planners to IT professionals, and we always love to know who's listening and who is joining us today. So some introductions on our side. My name is Jennifer Heath. I head up OpenBlue product marketing here with Johnson Controls. I have been with the collective Johnson Controls FM systems team for almost 15 years. I've been in the workplace management industry for 20. I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and I'm excited to hear what our other speakers have to say today about what's coming up in the next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves. Brian, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Brian Haines. I'm the Senior Director of Strategy for OpenBlue at Johnson Controls. Really excited to talk to everyone today. I've been doing this specific webcast for about a decade, really the trends and predictions. It's always a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to go back and see how well we did on our predictions from last year, as well as talk about what's coming in the next year. So thanks for welcoming me.
And Julius.
Hi, everyone. Julius Marchwicki. I am our general manager for our digital businesses here at Johnson Controls. Haven't been doing this webcast for a decade, maybe a couple of years. I feel like I've been doing this with the team. So thanks again for having me, and excited to talk about these exciting predictions for the future.
Very good. We're excited to have both of you here today. All right, so we are going to jump right in, talk a little bit about some of the trends that we observed in the last year, and then we'll look ahead to next year, starting with hybrid work. So this has been a very hot topic ever since the pandemic, but over the last couple of years, and particularly in 25, we have seen a real stabilization in terms of the adoption and the acceptance of hybrid work strategies. So Gallup released a poll just recently showing trends in hybrid work, and they showed about a 4% decrease in hybrid work in 2025. But equally, they showed a 2% increase in on-site work and a 2% increase in fully remote work. So the whole concept of remote, flexible, hybrid seems to really be normalizing. It's going to be a part of how we operate going forward. Brian, what are your thoughts on that? We talked so much at the beginning of the year about RTO mandates and return to office. Why do you think the numbers have stabilized the way they have?
Well, it's interesting because we did make the prediction that there's going to be stabilization, and the numbers seem to sort of prove that out a bit. I thought we were going to be wrong at the beginning of the year because it seemed like every other week a major corporation was announcing more stringent return to work requirements. We had some very large ones going with a 5-day requirement, which seemed to be a bit shocking compared to what we had seen for a number of years. So that, the noise around that, I think, has sort of dissipated a little bit as we went through the year. Less large corporations mandating that 100% return. And it's interesting, Jen, because one of the things I like to look at is the data, right? When we look at the data and the information, obviously we've got technology that help our clients in the market understand actual utilization versus intent, versus what you think is going to happen, versus predictions. And we look at what happened in reality. And what happened in reality was, we had all of these predictions of a sort of a massive, maybe a significant increase, like I was saying in the beginning of the year, that a lot more people would be back at the office. But the data, the utilization data, doesn't show that specifically. As a matter of fact, you would think that if there would be a correlation, a direct correlation between the work order return to work mandates and And utilization, if you say everybody's got to come back 5 days a week, you would see a significant increase in how our facilities are being utilized. We did not see that. The data did not prove that out. It showed a general slow uptick, the same that we've seen for a number of years. And we've got some pretty cool graphs. We've been tracking this since 2019 with the same sort of multi-million square foot data set globally so that we can get some trends. And we looked at that data compared to some other organizations like Stanford University that have also been tracking it. And they laid sort of right over top of one another and proved it out that even though we saw all of these work days, these return to work mandates, utilization and how heavily our buildings are being utilized did not necessarily, it's not one-to-one. It did increase slightly, but I definitely think we have stabilized. And I would say that this prediction was largely true.
Agreed. It's been really interesting to watch that evolution of hybrid work. And I think over the course of this year, the conversation has started to shift a little more to how do we leverage technology to make the most of this scenario? How do we evolve our office spaces to better suit hybrid workers? I think we're going to continue to have conversations about how to optimize it and maximize the potential. But I think this sort of this choice, this black and white choice of fully hybrid or fully in office, I don't think we're going to have that conversation much anymore. All right, shifting gears, probably the hottest topic this year and really in the last year as well, is AI. It feels like AI is the solution to all of our problems, and particularly when it comes to building automation, there's a ton of potential. So Julius, I'm going to give this one to you. Talk a little bit about how AI has advanced in our industry in the last year.
Yeah, well, it's certainly been a year when we're talking about artificial intelligence and there's no shortage of news. There's no shortage of news about how AI is going to fully transform everything, right? So it's not a futuristic idea, right? I think many of the organizations that we've worked with have already been building data. They've been using some of the basics around how AI is foundationally working, right? Using data to help make better decisions. Now with AI, they're taking that data, they're taking that clean data and turning that into, real insights that help catch issues earlier, help reduce energy waste, and stay ahead of potentially systemic failures that occur. And so, I think this has been an interesting year, from our perspective as we help our customers, extract data from their systems, apply our AI models that help them with, predictive maintenance or help them with energy conservation measures or optimization. I think AI has been helpful in taking a lot of noise, alerts, and alarms. There's no shortage of fatigue that our customers experience with all the data and all the alerts and alarms that are being emitted from their buildings, and turning that into insights. But really, what we need to make sure we're doing is helping create trust, meaning the AI-driven insight, and the human that's reading it or using it to change the operation of their buildings is trusting that data and is turning that into action. And I love this example. We've got a smart hospital customer in Canada that's using some of these AI powered data tools, and they helped cut some of their natural gas consumption by up to 40% and their overall energy usage by 20%. And those are really meaningful numbers, right? So, this is happening, right? It's happening, it's happening in pockets. And I think this is kind of the year where we'll start to see more and more of that as AI and humans develop a much better trust relationship with respect to the insights they provide.
And I think in addition to AI, the key word in what you just said is data, right? As we think about AI and all the ways we want to apply it, the underlying question is, do you have the right data for your AI models? And I think that has also been a big trend this year, that people are really focused on, what are my data sources? How can I expand those? How do I aggregate my data, normalize my data so that we can leverage this new AI capability and do some really impressive things.
Yeah, and
All
breaking
right.
down silos. Yeah, breaking down silos between those systems. All of that plays a role in making all of this more real than in previous years. But it's here. It's exciting.
It is, and we're going to
Yeah,
come back to AI when we get to predictions.
Great.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm starting to think of AI as like the universal language translator for taking human speech and translating it into computer speech, right, and back and forth, and in a way that, I say this sometimes when I'm speaking, that I feel like in the not so distant future, we're going to be talking to our buildings like Jim Kirk is talking to the enterprise. We're talking to it as if it's one of our teammates, right? And it's giving us answers. We're going to ask it how it's feeling, or it's going to be making recommendations to us. And I think that that's not science fiction. That actually we could do that now. And I think that in the future, AI is going to enable us to really start thinking about our buildings as our partners and less of our problems.
Definitely. That's a theme you and I have talked about a lot this last year, that we're in a position now where the buildings become a part of the team, not a problem that the team is trying to solve. All right. So moving on, the other big trend that we have talked a lot about this year is the importance of cybersecurity. Julius, I'm going to come back to you on this one. Cybersecurity has become so important because as we gather all this data, as we're digitizing assets and workflows and tracking utilization, you suddenly have a much greater vulnerability in terms of your cybersecurity. So Julius, talk a little bit about where we are with this and what we see changing.
Yeah, one of the themes we saw earlier this year when we've been visiting some of our trade shows is a renewed focus on securing operational technology. There's been a long-standing trend about securing IT assets, but not so much on the operational technology side, and that's almost surprising considering how critical that equipment is in keeping buildings up and running. And when you think about the types of buildings that we need to serve that are mission critical spaces, it becomes incredibly important to make sure that we're securing that technology, whether that's a hospital that's providing human care, whether that's an airport that's moving tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people each and every day around the country, around the world. There are some real mission critical environments that we need to protect, and so this is going to continue to be something that's out there that we have to pay attention to as facility managers, making sure we're not just relying, for example, on our IT teams to have a position about how to protect equipment, but also as facility professionals, we're thinking about how to still maintain and gather all of that important data that helps us do our jobs better, but also enabling the cybersecurity and eliminating any of that unplanned downtime due to cybersecurity risks, and starting to, again, back to that AI theme, leverage some of the new AI tools that are coming to help us with threat prediction. We were recently on a phone call with a hospital CTO. And they were talking about the fact that some of their elevators, right, were at risk of being hacked, and so there's a lot to think about, beyond just, is it a computer or is it my control system, right? There's escalators and elevators and any number of OT pieces of equipment inside of our buildings we need to care for, and so I think we're going to see a whole lot more of that moving forward as these threat actors get more and more aggressive.
Agreed. Before we transition over into our predictions, I want to invite the audience, if you experience trends or you have ideas on trends that were important or impactful in the last year, we'd love to hear from you. Likewise, as we go through our predictions for this next year, we'd love to know what you see coming in 26 as well. So please feel free to put those ideas in the chat. All right, so moving on, predictions for 26. So coming back to AI, Brian, let's talk about decision making. Why is AI so critical as we look at these vast data sets? How do you see us applying this to really be more effective in how we manage our space?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the solutions that we've been seeing coming into the commercial market, let's say previous to this year, were really centered around natural language translation, being able to really easily understand and interact with things like chatbots. That's transitioning very quickly to AI agents that are actually sites taking mass in their learning and enabling us to produce solutions that meet market needs really, really quickly. We've seen some amazing things in our own OpenBlue organization this year with the ability to be able to accelerate the development of new technologies using AI-based capabilities, as well as what they can actually do for us. And I think it's really going to take sort of what we've been dreaming about, and that is really listening to what the building is saying. All of these sensors, Julius was talking about the number of sensors and capabilities for the operational technology coming into organizations. Memori did a report that said, I believe by 2024, which was a couple of years ago, that there were already 500 million IoT devices installed in facilities that are producing data, and that is supposed to go up to something like 4 billion devices by 2030. Every single one of those devices is producing massive amounts of information. And frankly, humans are not very good at consuming that amount of data. We're good at all sorts of things. We're not really good at collecting and aggregating and making decisions based upon millions and millions and millions of data points produced at millisecond intervals. That's what AI can do. And it's now being wrapped into solutions for the market that truly are going to enable us to be able to do things like automate building control and automate the way our facilities operate. Understanding when people are going to show up, understanding weather patterns. It's interesting. We just had, oddly, we had a snowstorm in Raleigh that happened. And guess what? When snowstorms happen in North Carolina, no one shows up. But I'll guarantee you that most of the buildings in this area continued to operate as if everyone was going to be there that day. AI is going to solve those problems for us. It's going to say, listen, the snowstorm's coming. No one's going to be showing up. Let's bring the building down. Let's do other things. Let's optimize the building for cold weather procedures and make those decisions on its own. Obviously, humans are going to need to stay in the loop to be able to control that, but it's going to be phenomenal what these agents are going to be able to do because they can take lots and lots and lots of data inputs and make decisions to help us better optimize our facilities. That's what I think we're going to see this year.
It's really just an incredibly exciting time that there is this opportunity to monitor utilization and equipment and all this different activity to this level of detail. And now we also have the technology to really do something impactful with it. I think it's going to be a really exciting year to see some of this come to life.
Agreed.
Okay, our next prediction for next year is decarbonization. So this is a topic that we talk about all the time, and there are so many different sort of reference points. People talk about it as sustainability. They talk about it as ESG. There's all these different ways that people think about it. But for us, at the end of the day, we're talking about how to reduce emissions, specifically to reduce carbon, specifically to reduce cost, specifically to improve our overall energy distribution. Julius, how do you see some of these different technological capabilities, some of the shifting attitudes? Where do you think we're going to land when it comes to decarbonization in this next year?
Yeah. I think it's really important, Jen, that we take a look at this much more holistically. This used to be a regulatory driven, kind of top down approach. We must be net zero or we must be sustainable. I think what businesses have started to realize is that a dollar saved on energy or on avoiding a carbon emission tax, for example, can actually be invested in growth. And so this is really about a growth story. This is really about how we take AI or we take any type of optimization or any type of project meant to drive a return on investment that reduces energy spending and carbon emissions and turn that into a story about how I'm going to reinvest and reuse those dollars into growth, whether that's equipping a data center with more racks and more servers, whether that's being able to create create more, more office space for, for employees to go and operate, or take those dollars and invest them into, into teams and people. Organizations that are operating, I think, are starting to see that, decarbonization is really a growth story, right? And the more companies that choose to not just drive energy sustainability projects and work on decarbonization are also helping, decarbonize the grid. They're sourcing, they're sourcing, carbon-free renewable sources of energy, which is creating other growth opportunities in the utility space and in energy storage. I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to step back and say, this is less about meeting an arbitrary target or number. I think those things are great and important. But decarbonization and energy efficiency, I think, is a bottom line improving or a top line growth story that everyone can get behind and say, you know what, this is less about regulation and this is more about great business common sense that turns into an opportunity for us in the future. So, I think this is going to continue to see. May take a different name. It may have different connotation associated with it, but this is really going to be about how we drive growth in other areas of our business, because I'm not, quote, wasting it in another place on carbon or energy.
One element in this that I find interesting, and kind of linking back to that first topic around hybrid work and how do we evolve and improve our offices, making decisions around renovations versus retrofits versus new construction. There's price tags that come with that, but there's also emissions price tags that come along with that. And so when you're making those sorts of decisions, it's so important that you have the utilization data to support whatever decision it is you're making. If you're going to renovate an existing space, expand a space, put in, more collaboration space, whatever it is that you're doing, there is an emissions price tag that goes along with it. And I think so many of these pieces feed together in such a way that the more data you have, the more impactful you're going to be in all of these different areas.
Yeah. Was just talking to someone here at our office in New York, and one of the observations was made, across a fleet of buildings. Sometimes the older building with the older equipment is running more efficiently and more sustainably, or more than a newer building with newer equipment and more modern, maybe more modern technology or equipment. And that's just by virtue of, having fine-tuned it over years, and having leveraged data and experience to really get it down to, like the fine-tuned optimization that's needed. So I find that particular notion really comforting, and you can't do that unless you have this data that you've collected, that can identify these problems that you can go and fix. And even when you go and you fix those, you take into account patterns and usage trends. You don't implement those until you've captured them for several months or several years even. So I think that's again, this idea is going to be a really interesting as we get into 2026.
For sure. All right. Our last topic is sort of at technology at large, because there's a couple of big aspects here that are continuing to grow and advance. Brian, let's talk a little bit. We've touched on cybersecurity a little already, but let's talk a little bit about how you see that advancing. But then more importantly, I want to talk about this whole concept of open standards and why that is so important as we go forward.
Sorry, I was muted. When we go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, I think these both are closely related, and that is, the number of IT and OT, operational technology assets that are going into building that are smart, that are producing data. Most of the people that we deal with, most of them that we talk to, they don't just have one building. They don't just have one floor. They've got many often. Sometimes they've got dozens or hundreds. They may be in different geographic locations. Every single one of those buildings was built by perhaps a different contractor at a different time, different location, different materials, different building control systems, all of that. And so that introduces a huge challenge in terms of being able to rationalize all of the data coming from these buildings in a way that makes sense to solutions. Everyone we talk to these days, they want a single solution to solve their problems. They don't want to be logging into and out of 30 or 40 different solutions or having to aggregate data from one building control system to another. And that's really where we link sort of the amount of information coming from all of these really smart building systems and devices in ways that makes it a lot easier to understand the data that's coming from them and present the results of that data in a common interface. I think that also links to AI. AI is going to help us do that because it's really good at doing a lot of that refereeing, if you will, and looking at the data, rationalizing it, bringing it together in a way that makes sense for humans to consume. It's going to be less about, that person within your organization that has 30 or 40 years experience looking at, crazy graphs and things going up and down and having to sort of figure out what all of that means. And that's going to transition to simply getting answers and recommendations from our systems. This really is going to require a interoperability and open standards to really make all of those really disparate systems, going from the region to the facility to the floor to the different building control systems, all of that. They need to work together. They need to speak together. That's where we're going to see massive value. And I think AI is going to help to lead the way on a lot of that, frankly, because it's really great at crunching and bringing together a lot of that information. So I see them all coming together in 2026. I think right now is a really interesting time. We're seeing a lot of different technologies mature to the point that they're working well with one another, and I think that that's going to enable really great things in 2026.
Julius, any other thoughts there on cybersecurity in particular?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about, the ever evolving threats, right? This with the benefit of having AI driven threat detection, there's also AI that's being used on the opposite side, on the offensive side with bad actors. And so I think it's really important that we take advantage of some new technology architectures like zero trust. That's becoming, more and more imperative in terms of protecting OT equipment. We're talking network and network microsegmentation to make sure that OT equipment, IT equipment maybe don't live together on the same networks, and you can't use one point of entry that's vulnerable to expand the threats to a network. So I think there's going to be a lot in this space, as has always been in cybersecurity or in security in general. There's going to be a tug of war, so to speak. And really important that we stay ahead of all the technology that's going to be used for nefarious purposes. But I think there's some really great zero trust cybersecurity hardware and software products that can help our facility managers protect their critical equipment, protect their buildings, and then in partnership with your IT teams, how you protect data privacy and data security within your network is going to be something new, right? It's going to be something that our facility teams have to embrace much more closely. Whereas IT maybe was a pain point, leveraging them to help in the future, I think, is going to become more of the new normal.
I agree. I think you're going to see a real collaboration between facilities and IT that we've not really had in the past because it wasn't so necessary. But we're at this crossroads now where we've got to bring these two knowledge sets, understanding the building controls, understanding all the inner workings of the building, and bringing your IT team together. Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to let each of us give what we are most excited about in 26. I will say I am most excited. I think we're going to finally stop talking about bringing people back to the office. Everyone's made their decisions about what their strategy is, who they want there, and now we can focus on how do we optimize the space? How do we get really smart in managing space in a hybrid environment? Brian, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm most excited about the concept that I was talking about earlier. I see things like sustainability, energy management, improving the length of life of the assets that we have from the building all the way down to the building control systems and the equipment, all being completely linked and dependent upon one another, where the data flows in ways where the building understands how it's feeling. It tells us what it needs. We interact with it, and all of the technologies that I think that enable that sort of workflow are alive and well, and you're going to see some really amazing things in 26. That's what I'm most excited about.
And Julius.
Oh man, Brian always says he's great. He's always got these great like wrap ups. Yeah, for me, 2026 is where the rubber has to hit the road, right? We've talked about AI for a long time. We've talked about data and utilizing that data to help drive outcomes. I think this is the year where we truly want to see that at scale, right? We really want to start to see the transformational, organizational adoption of taking data from buildings that have been emitting it for decades, right? And really turning that into something that's going to be useful, that customers can turn into a growth story, right? They can turn that into something to invest in other areas of their business, making the building a strategic asset as opposed to just a place where I have to spend money on energy and people being in it. So I think there's a big opportunity in 2026 for us to start to change the focus into building a strategic asset that you can use to create the spaces that people want to work in and collaborate and innovate, or help and save lives in the cases of hospitals, or move people around. But that to me is my big aspiration for 26.
Very good. Well, thank you both so much. This has been a great discussion. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will be providing the recording. If you submitted a question at some point along the way, we will definitely be in touch with you to answer those. And certainly feel free to reach out anytime. Clearly, all three of us love talking about this stuff. We're excited to keep the conversation going. So thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon and a very happy holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you.